Hey everyone, my name is Penny Zanker, and it's time to reset. This podcast goes beyond just navigating change. It's about new ways of thinking about how you can approach challenges, how you can shift your mindset when needed, create some space and grace for yourself so that you can rethink, recharge, and reprioritize when and where needed. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Thank you for hitting play and sharing this next episode with me. It's time to reset. Hello, and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zanker, and I'm your host. And on this show, we look for unique individuals and various different people who are, leaders and executives and actors and wrestlers, right? Unique individuals who can help you to work smarter in the way that you approach your work and your life. And so today is no exception to that. I definitely have a unique individual with me. His name is Brimstone. He's had a successful and rewarding career spanning over 4 decades with the biggest set of different types of work and play that I've heard. So let's look at this. We've got professional wrestler, radio host, and podcaster, actor, does voiceovers, is a musician, a philanthropist, a food critic, a horror model, a comic book animator, and did I understand this for a game hero? So he's been called a Renaissance man by many, but more accurately described as a well-seasoned entertainer and a serial entertainment entrepreneur. So without further ado, Brimstone, welcome to the show.
Finally, Penny, Brimstone has made it to the Take Back Time podcast. Super stoked, super excited. Finally, now I can add Take Back Time to the things that I've done and accomplished throughout my career. And I'm super excited to be here with you today.
Awesome. Well, that's right. It's going to be right on top, right? Is the first thing that you were on Take Back Time.
Right on the top. It'll be the first one that goes in on the scriptures page on my official website. So there we go. I got you there.
Awesome. Tell me, what does Take Back Time mean to you? You've had like an amazing career in so many different areas. What does that title mean to you?
It's a very good question. I mean, I've been in the entertainment industry, like you mentioned, over 4 decades. And sometimes your workload can get so big, so huge, and it just, you feel the weight on your shoulders. Any opportunity that you can take to kind of get back a little more you time or family time, it's worth more than money, to be completely blunt. A lot of people don't know how to make the time for their business and then make the time for their family and make the time for their own personal health and wellness. And that's where you wind up finding a lot of issues and, where people are having very big, personal problems. They have issues with their families. They're having issues with their business. They have issues with friends. They can't keep, friends because they can't balance properly. And it's a very difficult thing when you have so many things going on to learn how to schedule yourself and take back some time for yourself from that schedule that becomes so crazy. Hope I'm making sense.
Absolutely. I find, when I'm talking to people, and I coach executives and talk to large audiences, and, what I hear most from people, right, is it's usually when they get that wake up call that they start to prioritize themselves, their relationships, their family, that usually there has to be a cost to it because I don't know why we're just wired to sort of overwork, right? And underplay. And so I'd like to know, how do you do it? How do you balance? How do you make sure there's enough time for you, enough time for your family? Like what's your key strategy?
My strategy is quite simple, and I've learned to do this over the years. I keep a very strict schedule. And to be completely blunt, my wife is the one who made me start doing it. I was working myself to the bone and not spending as much time as I should have with my family. I was touring all the time. When I was home, I was continuously, running into Manhattan because we're Long Island. So we're only about 40 minutes, to an hour into Manhattan. So I'd go and I'd be doing 3 to 4 different red carpets in a night just to make sure to keep the name relevant and get out into new audiences and so forth. And, unfortunately, what people don't realize, on the entertainment side as well as the entrepreneurial side, whichever way you're going to swing it. And let me just stop by saying, entertainers are entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs should be entertaining. So, keep that in the loop. But, you have to sacrifice when you're in entertainment. When you're an entrepreneur, you sacrifice. And unfortunately, one of the biggest sacrifices always happens to be the family. And that could cause many, many issues. And, it didn't, but it started to. And, we had conversations and I was able to kind of snap myself out of it. And, we worked out. I said, all right, well, we got to figure out scheduling and, know where I'm going to be, where you're going to be, how we're going to fit this in, how, you know what I mean? And in my defense, I've never once, let me take that back. Only one time over the course of, the last 20 years that I've been with my wife. And then prior to that, I never, ever, ever missed any important things, any birthdays, holidays, school things. I always made sure to be because I have to prioritize that, which I want to prioritize that over everything, because I do this for my family. I do this to leave a legacy, behind and money behind for my family. That's the reason why I do this. So you can't forget what's number one. So, and the one time, just so you know, the one time was I wound up on Mother's Day weekend. I got requested to do a booking in Ohio, a signing for 2 days. And I said to my wife, I go, hun, I got a booking for Mother's Day weekend, but I'm not going to do it. And she goes, well, okay, great. She goes, wait. For what? I said, a convention. And she's like, well, how much is it? What are they paying? And I was like, well, it's this. And it was a really nice amount. And she goes, we'll celebrate when you get home, go do it. And that's it. So I got permission first.
Right. Get permission first.
I got permission first.
So I want to interrupt you for a second, because I want to highlight some things for people who are listening. Mm-hmm. So, I think you made some points that I think are worth repeating and kind of putting in a context for everyone, is that we forget what we're doing this all for, is that we're doing it for our families, right? We're not working ourselves to the bone just because we like to work a lot, or maybe we do. But so I think we need to remind ourselves constantly, that bigger picture. What are we doing this for? What is important? And what would it cost us if we don't set those boundaries? Because that is the hardest thing for people, is to set boundaries and set some sort of inner rules. What I like about that, right, is you created this rule for yourself, which was, when it comes to important family events, I'm there. No excuses, and maybe one or two things you can negotiate or discuss, but that you're there.
Right.
And I think those pre-decisions that we make, they help us through those stressful times go, well, should I or shouldn't I? Then it's clear, right? There's nothing to think about. There's no stress about it. It's just like, nope, my kid's soccer game is this Sunday and I'm not missing that. Or, it's spring break and we're going on vacation. And so I'm not going to drive everybody insane and like fly out in the middle of the vacation and fly back in, or things like that. Because people do that and they don't realize the disruption that it has on the family and the disconnect that it creates. So I think it's so important that you said that. And, I wanted to point out that, like, there's a, date night, right, is a thing that was created that everybody's aware of. And it's there so that we can protect our relationship, so that we can say, I'm going to dedicate this special time, quality time, right? It's not always the amount of time, but it's that we're making space for quality time. And I think that I'm understanding that from you too, with those events, and those quality time. So we don't need to get guilty for maybe being away, as long as we make that quality time with our kids and with our family members. Did I capture those things right?
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. And it's funny, what do you call it? One of the things that somebody you might not even think, or you might not have ever heard about it, but I'm sure you know who Eminem is, right?
Yep.
So Eminem, one of the biggest names in the world, the way he works, and he works like a fiend, he works like an animal, but he also he runs it just like a business, just like I do. I run my entire world as a business. And he says, all right, well, I'm going to record. I'm coming in at this time until this time. I take my lunch break, and I work. And when it's time to check out, I check out, and that's it. I'm done. And that's it for me. I've learned that, that's a great way to do things. My only issue is that I also do multiple different facets of entertainment and entrepreneurial things. So, sometimes I can't just shut it off from 9 to 5, but I try to keep it where, as I mentioned earlier, I do like 2, 3, 4 interviews a day during the week. Weekends, either I'm traveling or I'm spending it with my family. You know what I mean?
Right.
What do you call it? At night, I try not to do as many interviews if I don't have to, because I want to be able to, if I have that time, to sit down with my wife, sit down with my kids. We go out to dinner, we do things together, because you have to have that bonding time with your family. You know what I mean? It's very important.
Let me ask you a question about that. So when you have you're coming to the end of your day and you're having a break going into your family, I call that, a transition. And the challenge with the pandemic is we've lost some of those transitions because we have a good transition if we have to get in the car and come home, that we can clear our head during that time. We can listen to some great music or whatever. And now if you're in your home studio or your home, then that transition is lessened. What do you do that kind of marks the end of your day and makes that transition so that when you start your evening with your family, that you're 100% present with your family?
Well, I mean, when I'm home and not touring, I have my studios and my office, my green room. I don't work out of my house. I have my own location with the Grindhouse Radio and also with Hound Comics Inc.
So that helps to keep that separate.
That helps keep it separate.
Go, no way, I'm not doing that together.
Right,
okay.
Right. So, every so often, they kind of cross over. I've been telling my wife that her and I should do a podcast together. She refuses. But, I said we should do something. We'll go into the studio and do it. But she's like, nah, maybe not. And, my kids, my older son, my son and my younger daughter have both shown interest in voice work and voice acting. So I bring them into the studio and I'll work with them when my engineers are around. So, but usually it's like I'm at the studio, I'm at the office. You know what I mean? You can easily communicate with me, but this is my office time. It's my work time. And when I come home, I still have some work to get done here and there, but I'm mostly turned off to the work and I'm, spending more time with the family. However, don't get me wrong. I have to, on my phone, I am on it 24/7 because I have to social media. And that's part of my business. I deal with people all around the world. So sometimes I'll get a message or a call at 2 a.m. and I'm still sitting and working. Now, again, I don't do that when I'm sitting down to the meal with my family. I don't do that while I'm sitting and watching a movie. You know what I mean? We take those specific times and we make sure, all right, I take my phone, and it wasn't always like this, but I'll take my phone and I'll put it down and I'll say, okay, this is it. Let's enjoy just being together.
I just want to say for people who are listening is you've got to put it away, because we all know that feeling of when we're sitting there having dinner with someone and they're on their phone. Like, one of the biggest realizations for me was when phones just started to become really popular, and it was New Year's Eve, and we were enjoying New Year's Eve, and half the people who were there in this small party that I was at, they were on their phone texting everybody Happy New Year instead of enjoying the moment with the people they were with. And I thought, this is crazy. It was sort of a shift for me to be like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be present. And I fight it. I'm not perfect, but I really do look to, not to have it at the dinner table. You have to have it away from you, because if it's there,
it's a temptation.
At the table, you're going to look at it. We've got this addictive impulse. It's got to be across the room and then out of sight, out of mind, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is where people in, that work at 9 to 5s, or they're, or even entrepreneurs, even though entrepreneurs, in business will go outside of normal business hours, quote unquote, because you've got the East Coast and West Coast and so forth. But, in terms of me as an entertainer, I'm Brimstone 24/7. So the thing that is different about me is I can't shut Brimstone off. You know what I mean? He's always still here.
Hold on. Me. You can do whatever you want, right? You choose. So we have to be, we all have to be aware, right? That we make a choice. And so it's important to you to be able to maintain that as well as maintain your family. But I know there are some entertainers who, they may work after hours or be present on social, but they are not a slave to, social media or their phone. It's a choice, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
How you want to show up.
The difference, not the difference, the thing that I'm really, when we go out to eat, I can't help it if somebody recognizes me and comes over and wants to talk. And I can't, and if it's happened to me in like the big theme parks where they've had to escort me out, not out, but, through the back to get away from people, where it's not a normal person.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I can't shut off that who I am. Yes, I can be Will. You know what I mean? My real name is Will, but I'm always Brimstone. You know what I mean? It's
right.
We're one and the same. So I can't, sometimes it's hard to shut the Brimstone off. What's really funny is that, and you'll appreciate this, is that obviously pandemic, we couldn't travel. I hadn't toured in forever, and I'm so used to being on the road and in and out of town and so forth. And finally, I said to my wife, we all have our shots, except for my little one, of course. But things started to dip down, and it was in that little period before we had the Delta and all that jazz start popping up again. And I said, "Hun, we need to go. We're going away. We're taking the time before school starts again. We're going to go away." And we're going to take a trip. I said, we're going to go to, we'll do this, that, and the next thing. We decided to go to Disney and do the whole Disney trip. While we were there, now normally when we go to Orlando and so forth, just like when I'll be going to Salem in a couple of weeks to celebrate our anniversary, and I contact Salem, they set up an itinerary for us, and we go in and we do things, and my wife doesn't mind. I take the time, I take pictures, I do whatever I've got to do. And then we get to do things that other people don't get to do.
Right.
So I do that with the theme parks while we're in Orlando. I do that with a lot of the places. It's called Give and Gets. And, I know a lot of the restaurants out there. So even this time I said, sweetheart, I don't care. I don't want to do a goddamn thing while we're there. I just want to be Will for the week, and we'll put Brim on the side, and he'll come out whenever he has to come out, and you know what I mean, and do his thing. And I kept it to such a minimal thing where I didn't. She's like, "Well, do you want to go?" I said, "No, I don't, because I don't want to have to. If I go there, I know I'm going to be stuck talking for a half an hour to 45 minutes, just sitting in kibitzing about all this what's going on, and so I can't." There was two things we did, one in Disney, and then the other was with Fogo de Show, which is I have a relationship with for 10, 12 years, so that's what we did while we were out there. Then I went to my father's house, and I was able to not do anything else. I did, however, have things scheduled during that week. So for one day on the Wednesday, we weren't going to the theme park. So we what do you call it? So the Wednesday I scheduled in the morning back to back. I had rescheduled everything for one day. I did about 6 interviews in a row, and then that was it for the rest of the trip. So I minimized everything that I had that I normally would do. And I just kind of put it on the side. So it was one of the most refreshing vacations I've ever had, to be completely blunt.
Yeah, no, sometimes you just need to do that. You need to take that hat off and just chill, right? And just be, and and coming back to the point about scheduling, right? Is that you can accomplish what you need to, like, even, I'm not against, sometimes when I'm on vacation, sometimes I'll just take the full vacation and not work at all. And sometimes I'll work like for an hour or two in the morning that I can get some sort of peaceful, like really good content together, for instance, or some things that are important to me. And then I've got the whole rest of the day to put that away and be with my family. So sometimes I like to do that as well, because then I don't come back to like a whole mound of, and I think everybody's got to do what works for them, right? There's no like balance that says you have to do it like this. Obviously, we have to listen to our bodies. If we're feeling stressed, right, that's the time to start taking things off of our schedule and give ourselves more space and look at getting more sleep and taking care of ourselves. If it really depends on what gives us energy and what takes energy away. So I think it's really important that we each find what that balance is for us.
And there is no cookie cutter way to do it. Everybody seems to think that there might be a cookie cutter. There is no, it's different for everybody. Scheduling though has been tremendous. I know what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, how I'm doing it. I give myself time, and I used to feel very stressed. I used to feel very on the tip of my seat, and not just because not in the good way when you're sitting and doing a sale and you're
being pulled in so many different directions, right? Yeah. You have so many different things going on that it can be overwhelming.
Very overwhelming. And it's unfortunate in entertainment, or as a parent, or as a husband or a wife, you're pulled in many different directions, and you want to make sure that everything is handled properly and given the attention that it just deserves. And sometimes it can be very overwhelming. I get it. I do get it. But if you schedule yourself out and you know what you're doing it for, and you put things into perspective, it's a completely different different ball game.
That's
it
such
really
an important word, perspective, right? Put things in perspective.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I was just thinking, a question popped up for me, and it's really, what do you think is the hardest lesson that you've learned
in terms of just life in general?
Life.
Or
life.
Trusting the wrong people. There are certain people out there that are not right for you. They're not meant to be around you, but they were meant to come into your life in order to teach you a lesson. And sometimes, and for me, failure is the biggest and the best thing ever. Failure is true success, because when you fail, as long as you do it properly, you know what I mean? And you figure out, well, what's the reasoning behind this failure? What went wrong? What can I do to adjust it? And you learn from it.
Right. We learn a lot more from failure than we do from success, right? Because we don't take the time to see why we were successful.
Absolutely.
Keep moving.
Exactly. You take those seeds of failure, you take those 2 steps back, plant those seeds, you're just taking 10 steps forward. You know what I mean? It's happened a few times throughout my career where I trusted the wrong person, and it rattled me. It rattled me. And, it was like the worst thing in the world at the time. And then afterwards I go, you know what? As awful as it was going through it, I learned a lot. And now here I am doing 10 times more. You know what I mean? And
it's a catalyst, right?
Yeah, it is.
It can be a catalyst. It's whatever we make it, actually, right? It can be something that holds us down and holds us back, or it can be a catalyst that propels us forward. It really depends on what we decide to make of it.
Absolutely. Another big lesson that I've learned that will help a lot of people. And I know it's hard for some people to do it, but learn how to just say no. Just say no. Huge situation. I mean, back at one point in my career, I used to say yes to everything, and I wanted to do everything and be everywhere, regardless of how exhausted I was and where my sanity was.
Right.
Maybe it's just that I wanted to prove that I could do it. You know what I mean? Or right. That I thought that I needed to. But eventually, I got to a point that I was just so overwhelmed, and, I didn't have the time for myself, with the family, with the friends. And, I was always committed. And half the time I was committed to things that didn't make sense, or they didn't necessarily care that I committed to it, and I was giving my time. So
it probably wasn't like really the most important things to drive you towards your goals, right? It was just things to fill your time. We do that, and and we're not realizing and really keeping our tasks in alignment with the goals that we've set. Sometimes we get way off, right? And that comes back to what you said about perspective, is stepping back and really saying, is this really important for me to do? Is this really driving me towards a long-term goal? And if not.
Exactly. And I mean, look, there's certain things that you want to do, and even if it's not a huge stepping stone, little things just to learn or to be out there and doing some stuff. But for the most part, when you've got things coming at you left, right, and sideways, you've got to learn how to say, and people that work 9 to 5s, guess what? You could do the same thing. Somebody is overloading you with work. Guess what? Say no, I'm not going to do it. And
there's a nice way to say it, right? You don't have to say no, right? You can say, listen, at the moment, here are my priorities. And, unless you want to shift these priorities, I won't have the capability or the capacity to do this as well. So, but if you want to change it, right, it's a nice way of saying no. But, it in essence, it's still saying no.
Absolutely. It is what it is. Some people are very, like I said, either they're afraid they're going to lose their job, or they're afraid they're going to insult somebody, or, piss someone off. You know what? You do it for you. You know what I mean? Same thing for anybody that's, creating anything, whether it's, in entertainment, a business, podcast, anything it is, anything that you're doing, create for yourself, not for other people. Your people will find you. Create for yourself. that is what's going to make you happy. You know what I mean? Work for yourself, build for yourself. And, you'll never look back. You know what I mean? It's just such a humbling thing.
Yeah, I think, what comes up for me when you say all that too, and about saying no, and the reason why we always say yes is, we can't take things too personally, is that we take life a little too seriously sometimes. And if we just would lighten up a little, I'm working on that. So I've got this theme going this year where I call it the joyification, bringing more joy into my life, because being busy is sucking the joy out of people, right?
Yes.
And so we've got to say no so that we can allow space for joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. That's everything. I want to be happy. That's all I want to be. I don't want to be miserable. I don't want to be so crazy where, it's just, I'm a miserable mess.
Right.
And then that affects my home life. That affects everything. When you're
health, our relationships, right? It affects everything.
Everything.
So
100%.
let me ask you one last question, and then we're going to have to bring our show to an end. So what brings you joy outside of your family, right? So, because obviously, that might be your number one, but outside of family, what's the number one thing that brings you joy?
The number one thing that brings me joy is essentially creating. I like to create things. I like to develop things. I like to bring into the world what I wish was there. For me, that's just pure joy. When I get to do voice work and bring life and breathe life into a character that was just a drawing on paper at one point and now is alive and on a screen. I mean, that just, to me, it's just so much fun. It's a beautiful thing. It's like being God without being God.
Right. Cool.
I'm not saying anything, God. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not you. What do you call it? But at the end of the day, just creativity. Creativity makes me go. That gets me, I don't do drugs. I'm not a drinker. That's what gets me high. You know what I mean? Just being creative. That's why I do, so many different things. That's why I've brought so many different products into market. That's why, it's because creativity for me is everything. It's my crutch. You know what I mean? It's my joy. It's my happiness. I like getting in there, not only just building it, but putting it out into the world and into the ether, promoting it, watching it grow, watching it get legs, watching it build out. I'm into the next natural progression of everything that I'm doing. You know what I mean? And that's how I've grown, over the years. Is I truly believe is unapologetically, authentic all the time. And that's one. And two is that I like to see what I can do next and what I can bring, forth into the world that makes people smile.
Right. No limits, right?
No limits.
Awesome.
Well, I don't do the adult world thing. That's not my thing. I got a face for radio. We're good for that. Other than that, no limits.
Right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find out more about you and what you're creating next?
You can always find everything at therealbrimstone.com. It's my official website. You can get everything there. All my social media is up there as well. I'm very, very big on my Instagram at The Real Brimstone. It's verified. You'll know it's me. It is always 200% of the time me responding. It's not my wife. It's not my assistant. It's not an intern. It's always me. So if you do send me messages, obviously please be respectful. Don't blow up my DMs. But if you send, write something on any of the photos, it's going to be me that responds. As long as you're respectful, we'll get to know each other there. I'm very open, and I love my fans, and I love the people that follow me. So, please check me out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Honor and a privilege.
And thank you all for being here. In each one of these shows, you get a different perspective. You hear how people are creating balance for themselves and where they're challenged as well, right? And you can relate to yourselves. I guarantee that you've walked away with a tip or two today that you can put into practice that can help you to work smarter, to think smarter, to be smarter. And that's our goal here. So thank you so much, everyone. My name is Penny Zanker, and this is Take Back Time. We'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. It really means a lot. If you're feeling a little off, distracted, overwhelmed, stuck, or just out of sync, remember that's your signal to reset. And that's all it takes, just recognizing one reset moment at a time. So stay tuned for more tips, tools, tricks, stories, strategies, all here on Time to Reset. We'll see you in the next episode.